Welcome back to Radio Taiwan International. You're listening to Geek Out. What's your cup of tea, tickles your fancy, or floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. I'm your host, Michelle Chang, and today in the studio we have one of my besties, Amanda Stevens.
Hello, everyone. Guess who's back?
Yes, back again.
Back again.
So what are we geeking out about today?
Well, I believe what we're going to be geeking out today is kind of a combination of drawing and comics and like making comics.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
well, comic books, I mean, this being a fairly nerdy show, I mean, comic books have been referred to or spoken about pretty often.
Yeah. It makes me happy, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like recently comics have kind of partially because of DC, I think also partially because of smartphones. Comics have been becoming less of a niche thing to like.
It's seen a resurgence.
Right. Well, because comics have a really long history. This might have already also been talked about, but like they have a really long history of being kind of like once a popular medium and then a counterculture medium.
Right.
And things that are counterculture are usually not popular or usually get ostracized, like horror movies, which is another thing we should talk about sometime.
Eventually.
I love those.
Oh, that'd be such a good episode.
Be so good. Halloween. So, but I think in part it is because of DC. I think not DC.
Marvel.
Well, yes, the movies.
Well,
actually, in general,
the
superhero movies.
Yep.
Like I think that has helped see a resurgence. I also think part of it is like honestly, the wide availability of web comics.
Absolutely.
I think has really helped. So anyway, I love comics. I love talking about them as like a medium. I'm not really into superhero comics though.
I mean, not everybody is. And look, listeners, if you haven't actually looked into the comic verse, the universe, there is a huge variation of genres that you can get into.
Absolutely.
There's, I mean, you name it, there is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to that point, like I took college courses on graphic novels.
Oh, yes.
And there are, like, I'm sure some of you out there either read or are reading or will read some critically acclaimed graphic novels which tackle really difficult subjects. And I think it's a really good medium to do that. So Mouse is a very famous one.
Very good.
There's another one. Oh, I'm just remembering Habibi, but that's not it. That one is very difficult topic, but really beautiful. There's another one about a woman who grows up in Iran. And I'm trying to remember what it is. I know because I read all of them.
We're going to blurt it out like we have Tourette's.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But oh my God, that sucks. I know what it is. It's a really good series. But anyway, those often get brought into classrooms because they can help you visualize like what's going on.
Yes. Mouse was actually brought into a classroom for me anyway.
It was for me too.
Yep. And it's a great way to get younger people more interested in, learning history.
Well, it's a great way to also kind of like visualize literally, but like it is another form of visual storytelling, right? So it's a good way to get those things across. I actually think I'm actually going to like look it up. So you might need to like,
oh, absolutely,
make a cut here. Cause I have to say the name of it. It is so good.
But right. There's historical history based comics. Then there's your obvious manga genre. And that covers all.
Persepolis.
Oh, Persepolis.
Persepolis. Okay. Sorry.
It's all
I
good.
found it. Then there's Persepolis, which it covers, is it Iran? Yes, it covers the Islamic Revolution in Iran.
Oh, wow.
From the perspective of a girl who grew up like around that time and then the changing cultures. And I actually think that is more, for me personally, I think that was more impactful because like we get told about World War II a lot, and we should. It was a really traumatic event for like many countries around the world. But like for things like the Cultural Revolution in Iran, which I didn't hear about,
many people did not.
I was again misinformed about, not even like uninformed, just misinformed. It was really telling to see these like stories, to see them as well, not to just read about them, because you can imagine them however you want, but then when you have a visual image for like, no, this is what it looked like, even if it's like exaggerated in one way or another, it's usually in the service of conveying a feeling or like an event.
Exactly.
That happened.
And these events should provoke emotion.
Yeah.
So, having these graphic novels be able to do that for people at any age is great.
Yeah, I cut you off earlier. You were saying there are graphic novels for all ages.
Yes, so graphic novels for all ages. Absolutely. In every genre.
In East Asia, we get a lot of them. That also might be what's coloring my perspective, is like we are in East Asia.
Absolutely.
But I feel like it was still really popular. Well, I mean, it was also my crew that I was with. So
yeah, manga. Absolutely. Yeah.
Manga's huge.
Yeah. Well, in Taiwan, manga is very popular. There are obviously bookstores that sell manga, and there's these places where you can actually pay by the hour to go and hang out in
And
just read, right?
Yeah.
You can basically you pay by the hour to rent out this little booth, so you have privacy and you can go and read as many comic books as you want in the amount of time that you're allotted.
I would have killed for that when I was a high schooler, because I grew up in Seattle. I bring this up a lot, but I would scrape together money to buy the next issue, or like scour the library. I would order books ahead of time through the library, because
Okay.
our local library system was really, it's a really good, robust library system. They started to really branch out and try to make books available. They had big graphic novel sections that they were trying to incorporate, because it was a growing want from the community.
Yeah.
But like, I could not get the next, like trying to get the next book in the series I was reading in like graphic novels, in manga, in manhwa, which is the Korean one.
Yeah.
But formerly lesser known, now thanks to the explosive Korea culture bubble,
Oh yes.
very popular.
And of course, the major media, corporations like Netflix, right?
Yes.
Have done their fair share in popularizing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So yeah, but there's other ones. There's a lot of really good American studios out there. Black Horse Comics is one that's a publisher. They publish a lot of different ones. The other ones are escaping me at the moment. I think Penguin publishes some of them too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
They do. They've got their finger in everything. But yeah, like there's just a lot of variation out there in graphic novels. You can definitely find something you want.
But yes, let's talk favorites.
Favorites. Oh boy.
Right. I didn't say favorite. You don't have to choose one.
Yeah. So, favorites. My favorite that I'm currently reading, I have a couple of favorites that I'm currently reading. One of them is online, and one of them I refuse to read online because I want to buy the physical book. I want to support the writer and the artist.
I mean, and there's something really primally satisfying about flipping through the pages of a book, right?
Yes. I push back on the idea that like, oh, reading online is going to kill books. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No, because there's always those of us who are going to buy books because we like books.
It's satisfying. Like we still have that love of it.
Yeah.
But to the comics that I really love, the one that I'm reading in person is called Saga, and it is not finished yet. It's really good. It's a book by, I don't remember the writer's name, but I remember the artist is Fiona Staples.
Okay.
So I'll
give
send
us a
that to you later.
premise without too many spoilers.
It's a very large story, and it is about a couple that's a star-crossed lover couple. It's set in like a sweeping galaxy, like space, like fantasy magical space galaxy.
Awesome.
Where there is a large intergalactic war happening between these two races, and it seems to be like race-based.
Okay.
As well.
Okay.
Between the bug people who are winning, and then like these kind of like, they look like mostly regular people, but they have some goat-like features.
Okay.
Including horns and some other little telltale signs. And the bug people are winning, and it's very much us versus them. But then one day a bug woman falls in love with a goat man, and they have a baby. And the galaxy is trying to find them and kill their baby and kill the two of them
Because this is forbidden.
It's forbidden. It's propagandic as well. And the story is told, the narrator is actually the child who's talking about the story of her parents. And she grows up.
I love this already.
It's really good. And she grows up during this, and she's kind of telling the story of how her parents met and what they did. And it is not a pretty story. It is beautiful. The art is beautiful, but it is a really messy story. It's really graphic. It's not a series for children.
Okay.
There's a lot of like really graphic stuff that happens because it discusses the nature of war. There's like a race of TV people there that are also getting involved. They're in their own war, but you see, it's interesting because it shows you like the effect of PTSD and all these traumatic things, because they're people in every sense except they have a TV for their head. But what that means is you see what they're thinking of.
Oh wow. Okay.
At all times.
Wow. Okay.
So
I get it.
It's a very interesting, like, it's kind of absurdist in like the art and the creatures that are presented.
Yeah.
And it's just a bunch of these characters that have their own story going on that get pulled into chasing this couple and their child. And then this couple and their child who are like running throughout the galaxy just trying to survive and trying to keep their baby alive, and their relationship struggles and how like it's not pretty, it's messy. I think they split for some time and then they come back together because like it's really stressful, and like they love each other, but also like it's hard to have a good functioning relationship when the galaxy's trying to kill you.
Right. I mean, like you said, it might be absurdist in the way that in the image, in the art and the imagery, but it's apparently dealing with a lot of real life.
It's so good. Like it deals with a lot of really heavy topics, but in a really artful way, in a really like convincing and compelling way. It's very good. So Saga, that's that one. That's one of my favorites.
It's called Saga, and it's huge.
The art, I said, I don't know what I said earlier, but to be very clear, the art is beautiful. Like the covers are beautiful. Fiona Staples, the artist, does an amazing job with the story that's written by the writer who I can't remember right now.
But look it up, guys.
Look it up. The other one is, I'm reading it online, is Lore Olympus, which is very famous. You might have heard about it.
I've heard about it, yeah.
I heard about it, which is a retelling of the Persephone and Hades novel, but through a very modern lens.
Yes, absolutely. Greek mythology is popular in general, and it's great. I love this, and it's great that graphic artists have taken this and reinvented it.
Yeah, this one is also not necessarily one. I don't know if I'd say it's one for children or not, because it does deal with a lot of like sexual topics.
I mean, Greek mythology mythology in general, is it for children or not? Questionable.
Greek mythology and fairy tales are, as two of my specialties, I would say, are things that there is a sanitized version of it, and then it's one of those things you grow up and you read what the story actually said. Yeah. And then you could go deeper into that or not. But the story in Lore Olympus, does not shy away from all those things. It deals with a lot of like in that way, it deals with heavy topics, but it goes through a modern lens. I don't know that I would say it's not for a younger audience. It's not for children.
Okay.
But I would say in its own way, it actually would probably be a good read for young adults, because it gives you a really good script. The characters are very mature. Ooh, and so while they do deal with things like sexual predators or like trauma or really difficult family relations, they also kind of provide, like, in a way that is sometimes hokey when you're reading through it, like there's a very idealized script of like, this is the conversation that you should have with that person.
And
like,
that's
this
really
is what
valuable.
Support looks like when people, like, this is what it might feel like to you. And then having the visual medium of like, instead of reading like, oh, this is what I felt like, I'm trying to put it into words, just showing it. Yeah. And then also showing other people realizing like the hurt that somebody's going through, or the ill intention somebody else has. Like, it would probably be good for a young
adult,
maybe like young adults, I think, could read it. It's just something you should know about before you go in. Like, it does deal with that, but it's really beautiful. It's really colorful. Yay. It's very modernized. And that one's online. And those are two of mine. And then I read a lot of, anyway, get back to like favorite comics. I read a lot of them through like an online reading app. So like some people have what is it? Weibo, web comics. Mine is Manta Comics. So that's what I'm reading.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of platforms that you can use to read web comics, but you're using Weibo.
Wait, not Weibo. Manta.
Manta.
It's just like it's an online publishing thing. So
cool. But that actually makes access really easy for most people. Do you have to pay for yours?
I do. I pay a monthly fee. Okay. So, and I don't know, like on that topic, I don't know if I still am kind of debating about doing it, because a lot of those online publishing things aren't really like fair pay.
Yeah. I mean,
so I haven't decided yet if I like want to keep like, I want the stories, but I'm like, I need to find a way to do this.
That's like a whole
sustainably a different topic,
a whole different episode about fair pay to artists.
Oh my God.
That's a huge thing right now.
I should talk to Sharon and she'll have me on.
Absolutely. That's debatable. I mean, yes, exposure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I said the word.
How did you do that?
I'm sorry.
Okay. So, but anyway, so those are some of my favorite comics.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we're actually branching out on the subject, because the vast majority of people whom I've had on read superhero comics, right? Your pretty standard DC Marvel stuff.
So I could say the genre of comics that I like to read. When I first started reading comics, I was drawn into graphic novels. Yes. At the time today, there is still a distinction, but I think it's a gap that is kind of lessening, or it's getting smaller. Yep. The first comics that I read were usually by American artists who were inspired by superhero comics, but they were not superhero comics themselves. And like one of them was a drama. It was a high fantasy drama. There was another one I read, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was in
comic form.
Oh yeah, awesome. It's so good. It's the original text, but then they draw pictures to go with it and makes it very palatable. Right. It's from a whole movement of getting like classical books made into graphic novels, so children will read them. Yeah. And keep their attention.
You lent me a series of comic books recently because
did.
I'm not really a podcast person.
Oh, it's so good though. From the Adventure Zone.
Yes, the Adventure Zone, the arc, the
balance arc.
I did a special
tribute arc. about it.
yeah. Check out that episode of Tales of Our Time. But that was fantastic because
It's really
I
fun.
might have trouble listening to podcasts and devoting attention to it, but the graphic art really sucked me into the story.
It's really fun.
And it was yes, it's very well drawn.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to read it. So,
it's a
yeah,
good
thank
way.
you.
It's a good way to get a bunch of stories. So then I guess the other genre that I really like to read are I read a lot of dramas. I read a lot of romantic dramas, period dramas, murder mysteries.
Yep.
I went through a magical girl phase.
Yay. Like Sailor Moon phase type of magical girl. Okay.
I really wanted to watch Sailor Moon, but I could never get to it. So there was another one, Saint Tail. She was like a magician and a thief.
Yes.
And it was kind of like both of those things.
Absolutely.
And then today I read a lot of dramas and like murder dramas, revenge dramas, isekais, which is like I woke up in a book and now I have to try to survive. And some other thing. And then like books like Saga and Persepolis and like Watchmen. So
I mean, most people are on Netflix at this point.
Yes.
Are there any conversions to either live action or animated that you would highly recommend
that I would recommend.
that might have begun in graphic art? Spy Family is a huge.
Spy X Family. I have not read the comic for that one.
Yeah.
I would super recommend the show though.
The show is good,
Yeah, it's really good. It's a very heartwarming, like, it's very anti-war
wholesome.
and it's very wholesome. And those are two messages that I think ring really true today with everything that we have going on.
I'm also hearing great things about the One Piece live action.
I actually loved the One Piece live action.
I haven't watched it yet.
I would say two things. I would say the thing that surprised me and my boyfriend about the One Piece live action were the budget, which does matter in a comic book adaptation. They don't always get the money to like fulfill the wants and needs, but it was the budget. And then two, it was a show that was like clearly made by people who love the source material.
Yes.
And you can feel that, at least for me, I could feel that in every episode, like from every actor, from every actress, from every like set piece. Like you could really feel the love that went into the show and the exuberance for the material that was coming out of the performances.
Yeah.
And even like there, you could still like say some fair things about like the acting from some characters is not very good, but I think it's because they have new actors. But like that one is very much an adaptation in terms of you can compare shot by shot.
Yeah.
They recreate comic book shots for some of the most epic moments.
And that's a whole beast in itself, because if you're trying to adapt a book into like a TV series or a movie, that is, you know, it's just text that you're trying to convert over. But if you're dealing with graphic novels,
well, it's like, I guess we could get into this later, but the thing that the one thing that makes turning graphic novels and comics into movies difficult is because they're both visual storytelling, but there's a different language that is used when doing those things, and there are different techniques that are used in comics to convey emotion and to convey meaning that don't translate well when a real person does them.
Yes.
And like in manga, obviously catchphrases is something that's very obvious, but it works well when you're reading it, because that's something that like you can immediately know what the character thinks. Right. It's a shortcut. It is like a trope in that way.
Yep.
Another one are like super close-ups because you don't have actual acting.
Yeah. So you get like somebody's eyeball.
Right. So you're trying to convey emotion through the pictures rather than somebody who can actually emote it out. Lines that like anyone who's seen any other live action adaptation, worked better in the comic than they did in real life. But the One Piece one I personally thought was really good in terms of like it got the mood right. You could feel the love for it, and I had fun watching it.
Yay!
It was a fun watch.
I got to get into it.
It's loud.
So
I will watch out.
Oh, I love loud.
It's loud.
It's great. So
it's loud. It's goofy. It was fun.
For those who have not yet forayed into graphic art,
hey,
any words for them?
Like if you're considering comics, or if you haven't read any comics before, I would say look for highly recommend. Go to the highly recommended section.
Yeah.
And then look in a genre that you are already interested in.
Because there will be a graphic novel.
There will be a graphic novel, and it might be called a graphic novel, it might be called a comic, it might be called a manhwa. The other thing is, I would say depending on the size of the book, if it's something that's serialized, give it maybe 2 books. Give it a shot. If you really hate it, drop it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, give it 2 books. If a series is daunting to you, then consider a standalone graphic novel. There are a lot of those that are really good.
Right.
Like we talked about Mouse and Persepolis.
Yeah.
Those are
Mouse is 2 books, I believe.
They have been compiled sometimes into a single book,
Oh, cool.
although they were originally individual volumes. So you could just pick that up and like read it. But it's not a series. They're standalone. There are other books like Watchmen, which is I've said a lot of books that are difficult topics, but that one is. But it's also a standalone book. So like if you're upset by that, there are also a lot of other, just like if you look in the genre of graphic novels, there's an artist that I like that I mentioned, Habibi. That's a standalone story that I really love. It's very beautiful. It's not connected to anything else. It's thick, but it's just one book.
And well, graphic artists, you tend to roll through the pages rather quickly. So.
You'll probably read it very fast.
Yeah.
We talked about the Adventure Zone comics as well. That's a really good series. It's short. It's not finished yet, but you can go through like each individual book.
Yep, I believe there's 5 out right now.
I think so, yeah.
And they're probably going to finish in number 6.
Yeah, the total number I think should be around 7, maybe 8, depending on how they decide to finish it.
Yeah, so fairly short series.
Right. So I think there's a lot of genres you could get into, and there's a lot of art styles. So depending on where you choose to read, you might have to learn something new, or you could just start where you are today. So I really recommend it. It's one of my favorite mediums.
Yeah.
Stay that way, and you don't have to be in a superhero to like it.
Nope, you don't have to be quote unquote nerdy.
You don't have to be nerdy. Everybody, like there's definitely something out there for everybody. It's my favorite.
Yes,
I think.
Thanks for geeking out with me, Amanda.
Yeah, of course. You got it.
And thanks, listeners, for tuning in to Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang, and I'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Geek Out.
See you later.
Bye.